What if the guitarist who powered Frankenstein built the perfect American heavy metal band, then destroyed it himself? A frontman discovered in the Bay Area cover band scene. Two albums that blueprinted the Van Halen sound. Then acrimony reached its peak in Paris, and the singer was gone. The discipline that forged legends became the cage that destroyed them. This is Montrose, the band that imploded at the exact moment they should have ruled the world. The rise and fall, everyone focuses on the fall. But the rise, that's where it really went wrong. Because success didn't change them. It revealed who they always were. And who they were couldn't survive what they wanted. The chemistry that made them unstoppable, the same chemistry that made them incompatible. What they didn't understand was that the basement magic and the stadium pressure required different people. And you can't be both. If you want the complete, unfiltered truth about the bands that changed rock forever, subscribe to American Band Vault right now, because the stories you think you know are only half the truth. Denver, Colorado, late 1960s. While most guitarists were content to jam in garages and dream of stardom, Ronnie Montrose was taking a different path. He wasn't interested in being another blues rock hotshot chasing the British invasion. He was building something else. A reputation as a craftsman, a session professional who could adapt to any style and deliver precision under pressure. His early work reads like a masterclass in versatility. He provided the melodic drive behind Van Morrison's Wild Night on the 1971 album Tupelo Honey. He explored the fringes of jazz with Herbie Hancock. He even contributed to experimental electronic projects with Beaver and Krauss, proving he could handle atmospheric textures and rhythmic complexity that most rock guitarists wouldn't touch. This wasn't ego, this was discipline. But session work, no matter how prestigious, has limits. You're always serving someone else's vision. And by 1972, Ronnie Montrose was ready to build his own. The transition came when he joined the Edgar Winter Group. Edgar Winter, having moved away from his soul rock outfit White Trash, needed a guitarist with star quality. Someone volatile, unpredictable, fiery. Ronnie fit perfectly. He contributed the iconic chilling riffs to Frankenstein and the high-energy drive of Free Ride on the massively successful album They Only Come Out at Night. Winter later described Ronnie as Mr. Unpredictable, a man who brought spontaneity and a rock and roll attitude to the stage. But that same unpredictability and burgeoning ambition made it clear Ronnie wouldn't be a permanent sideman. By early 1973, despite the commercial success, he made his decision. He was leaving to build his own vision, a band that would be tight, heavy, and uncompromising. He wanted to move away from Edgar Winter's sprawling arrangements and towards something more concentrated, pure riff-based power. No keyboards, no horns, just guitar, bass, drums, and a voice that could cut through a wall of amplifiers. The vision was clear. Now he needed the right people to execute it. What he didn't know was that finding the perfect team would also mean finding the perfect conditions for collapse. Finding the right musicians wasn't about searching the clubs or holding auditions. Ronnie Montrose was methodical. He knew exactly what he needed. Young, hungry talent that could be molded into a cohesive unit under his direction. For bass, he recruited Bill Church, his former colleague from the Van Morrison sessions. Church was solid, reliable, someone who understood Ronnie's standards. For drums, he found Denny Carmassi, a powerhouse player from the soul rock project Sweet Linda Divine. Carmassi's style was characterized by mechanical precision and an ability to maintain a heavy, relentless beat that would anchor Ronnie's soaring riffs. But the real discovery, the lightning-in-a-bottle moment, came from the San Francisco Bay Area cover band scene. In 1972, Sammy Hagar was struggling. His previous band had fallen apart, leaving him working odd jobs to support himself. But despite these setbacks, Hagar remained a fixture in the local music scene, playing cover bands and developing a reputation for high-energy performance and a vocal range that could shatter glass. The meeting between Hagar and Montrose is the stuff of rock legend. Ronnie had seen Hagar performing and was struck by his firecracker energy. When they connected, Hagar showed up at Ronnie's door in Sausalito with a Les Paul and a notebook of lyrics. Picture this scene, a struggling singer with songs he'd written just days before, standing in front of a session professional who just left one of the biggest bands in America. Hagar played him early versions of Bad Motor Scooter and Make It Last. 4 songs total. His first 4 songs ever written. Ronnie's response was immediate. Let's start a band. Within a month, they were signed to Warner Brothers. The chemistry was instant. Hagar brought the raw, unpolished energy. Ronnie brought the discipline and the industry connections. Ted Templeman, the producer who'd worked with Ronnie on the Van Morrison sessions, heard their demos and recognized the future of American rock. He helped secure the record contract, and suddenly Montrose had the resources to make their vision real. But chemistry has a dangerous quality. It either holds everything together or it explodes. The group made their public debut on April 21, 1973, with a 45-minute radio broadcast on KSAN-FM's Tom Donahue Show. The broadcast, recorded at the record plant in Sausalito, showcased a band that already sounded remarkably polished and explosive. This wasn't a garage band finding their sound. This was a professional operation from day one. They played 10 songs, their entire first album minus Space Station No. 5, plus unreleased tracks. The radio audience heard something they'd never heard before: American hard rock that didn't sound British, that didn't apologize, that didn't need keyboards or orchestras or gimmicks. Just four people and the power of precision. Everything was about to change. They just didn't know the cost. When the self-titled Montrose album was released in October 1973, it represented a seismic shift in American music. At a time when British bands like Led Zeppelin and Deep Purple were the standard bearers for heavy music, Montrose delivered an 8-song collection that felt more direct, punchy, and modern. The sonic identity was forged through innovation. Ronnie primarily used a Gibson Les Paul run through a Fender Bandmaster amplifier and an Electro Harmonix Big Muff fuzzbox. This setup produced a saturated, thick tone that maintained clarity, a sound that some critics would hail as the first American heavy metal album. Ted Templeman's production philosophy was essential. He preferred a dry, in-the-room sound that highlighted the interplay between the four musicians. The album was recorded quickly, capturing the raw chemistry of a band that had barely gigged together before entering the studio. For listeners who discovered this album late at night on FM radio, these tracks became sacred. Rock the Nation opened with blazing sound and heavy cowbell work from Carmassi. Bad Motor Scooter became one of the most famous motorcycle-themed songs in rock history, with Ronnie using his guitar to mimic the sound of a revving engine. Then there was Space Station No. 5, a proto-metal epic that combined sci-fi lyrics with aggressive tempo shifts. But the song that would define their legacy was Rock Candy. That slow, stomping riff became a template for arena rock anthems. It was the sound of American hard rock finding its identity, not trying to be British blues, not trying to be psychedelic, just pure, unapologetic power. The album Closer, Make It Last, featured Hagar's raw vocal performance and chord progressions that a young guitarist named Eddie Van Halen would later cite as a foundational influence on his own style. Despite the album's brilliance, the record label didn't know what to do with Montrose. They already had the Doobie Brothers for mainstream rock and Deep Purple for hard rock. They viewed Montrose as redundant and didn't put the full weight of their marketing machine behind the debut. The album peaked at number 133 on the Billboard charts. Only through relentless FM radio airplay and the band's reputation as a can't-miss live act did the record eventually become a sleeper hit, reaching platinum status over a decade later in 1986. For many fans, this lack of immediate corporate success made the band feel like a best-kept secret. What they didn't see was how that lack of immediate validation was already creating pressure, already planting seeds of doubt. Following the debut's release, Montrose hit the road with a vengeance. They opened for some of the biggest names in the industry: Aerosmith, Kiss, Journey, Mott the Hoople. For audiences of that era, seeing Montrose was often an aha moment. They were frequently the band that upstaged the headliner. On September 29, 1973, at Winterland in San Francisco, they opened for Mott the Hoople and Barnstorm. The show became infamous for Hagar's Roger Daltrey-style microphone swinging. He accidentally struck the bass player in the head, causing blood to stream down his face while a roadie wiped it away mid-song. Hagar allegedly never apologized. This was raw, unpolished energy personified. The band's connection to Detroit's Cobo Hall was particularly strong. They performed there in the summer of 1973 with Aerosmith, a show Hagar remembered as the definitive Rock City experience where the band felt they truly belonged on the national stage. They appeared on the Midnight Special 3 times between March 1974 and March 1975, bringing their explosive performances to television audiences across America. But beneath the sold-out shows and the growing cult following, a fundamental tension was building. The same discipline that had created this perfect machine was beginning to feel like a cage. The first real crack appeared with Bill Church, the bassist who'd been with Ronnie since the Van Morrison days, who understood the vision from day one, left the band in 1974. He was replaced by Alan Fitzgerald for the second album, Paper Money. No dramatic exit, no public statement, just gone. This should have been a red flag. When the foundation starts to shift, everything above it becomes unstable. Subscribe to American Band Vault now, because these are the stories that matter, the truth behind the music you love. By 1974, Ronnie had grown weary of being pigeonholed as a heavy metal guitarist. He perceived the one-dimensionality of the hard rock sound as commercially waning and personally unfulfilling. He wanted to prove he was a musician first and a rock star second. This led to a desire to broaden the band's sonic palette, to include folk, jazz, more mature compositions. Sammy Hagar felt the opposite. The band was just hitting its stride as a heavy unit. They had momentum. They had an audience. Why change? As the band entered the studio to record Paper Money, the collaborative spirit that had defined the debut began to crumble. Ronnie, ever the perfectionist, began to assert a level of control that stifled the chemistry that had made them explosive. Hagar recalled that on the second record, Ronnie wouldn't even listen to his songs, choosing instead to look to outside writers or cover material. This led to a fractured album where Hagar and Montrose co-wrote only 4 tracks. The inclusion of covers like Underground and Connection signaled a move toward a more varied and mellow sound. One particular track, I Got the Fire, became a flashpoint. Hagar claimed he wrote the lyrics and melody, but Ronnie initially failed to give him songwriting credit. When the publishing check came without Hagar's payment, he brought it up. Ronnie's response, according to Hagar, "All you care about is the money." This wasn't just a creative disagreement. This was a personality clash at its core. Ronnie's discipline versus Hagar's ambition. The very structure that had made Montrose successful was now suffocating its greatest asset. Ronnie's anti-drug stance also became a point of contention. Stemming from a near-fatal amphetamine overdose during his Edgar Winter Group stint, he imposed strict policies of drug and alcohol-free performances on the entire band. What had once felt like professional standards now felt like control for control's sake. What they didn't realize yet was that control and creativity rarely coexist peacefully, and when you prioritize one, you sacrifice the other. Paper Money reached number 65 on the Billboard 200, the band's highest charting release. It initially sold twice as many copies as the debut. From a business perspective, this was success. The trajectory was upward, but it lacked the singular vision of the debut. Critics gave it lukewarm responses. Fans had mixed reactions. For those who had fallen in love with the raw power of the first album, this felt like compromise. And compromise in rock and roll is death. The numbers said one thing, the music said another. And that gap between commercial validation and artistic satisfaction, that's where bands go to die. For 2 years after Paper Money, it worked. On the surface, at least. Tours sold out. They had a system now. Write, record, tour, repeat. The money was good. The shows were great. Fans were loyal. From the business side, it looked flawless. They were professionals. They showed up. They delivered. They made everyone around them rich. The label loved them. Management loved them. The industry held them up as the model. In interviews, they talked about brotherhood, family, being in it together. And they believed it, sort of. They'd been doing this for years now. They knew each other's patterns, accepted each other's flaws. It wasn't the basement anymore, but it didn't have to be. That's what they told themselves. This was the mature version, the sustainable version, the version that could last forever. But here's what was really happening beneath that professional veneer. They weren't writing together anymore. The chemistry that made them special, they'd professionalized it to death. They were co-workers now, skilled co-workers. But the magic, the thing that made them, gone. Replaced by efficiency, by routine, by good enough. And nobody wanted to say it out loud, because saying it made it real. And making it real meant admitting that everything they'd built was built on something that no longer existed. What they didn't know was that stability isn't peace. It's just pressure evenly distributed. And all it takes is one crack for everything to collapse. The Warner Bros. Music Show package tour of 1974-75 took them across Europe with Tower of Power, Little Feat, and the Doobie Brothers. Major venues, international exposure, everything a band dreams of. But on that tour, something shifted. European press began to take notice of Hagar's powerful stage presence. Reviews praised his vocals, his energy, his Robert Plant-like charisma. Rather than being pleased that his band had a world-class frontman, Ronnie reportedly became irritated. He felt snubbed as the band leader, the architect getting overshadowed by the face of the building. Don't miss another story. Subscribe to American Band Vault and join thousands who get the real history of rock. It happened in Paris. February 1975, they were preparing to perform 2 tour-ending shows at the Olympia Theater. According to accounts from Martin Popoff's book, Rock the Nation, Ronnie turned to Sammy in the back of a car, Sammy, Alan Fitzgerald, and Denny Carmassi all in the back seat, and abruptly told him he was breaking up the band, asked him what he planned to do with his life now. Just like that. No warning, no negotiation, just a sudden declaration that everything they'd built was over. After the shows, with Hagar sick from food poisoning, he didn't even fly home on the same plane as Ronnie. He was already plotting to take Denny and Fitzgerald to start a new band. But Ronnie lured them back with a new Warner Bros. Contract, something Hagar suspected was premeditated and already in the works without his knowledge. The dismissal was stunning in its abruptness. No warning. No attempt at reconciliation, just a sudden end to what could have been the greatest American hard rock band of the decade. And once that line was crossed, there was no way back. They just didn't know it yet. They thought they could manage it, contain it. But you can't contain a fracture. You can only watch it spread. Ronnie attempted to keep the Montrose name alive by recruiting vocalist Bob James, a South Bay native who had previously fronted a Montrose cover band, and keyboardist Jim Alshavar, turning the group into a five-piece. Warner Brothers Presents Montrose was released in September 1975, followed by Jump On It in August 1976. Both albums featured a more polished, space funk sound. The band continued to tour with major acts like Rush, Journey, and Kiss. Under Bill Graham's high-profile management, they reached the peak of their commercial popularity during this era, adhering to a grueling tour schedule across America and Canada. Warner Bros. Presents reached number 79 on the Billboard 200, their second highest chart position. Jump On It peaked at number 118. The numbers were respectable. The tours were successful, but the magic was undeniably gone. The audience that had fallen in love with the raw power of the debut didn't connect with this new iteration. Rolling Stone reviewer Andy McKay described Warner Bros. Presents as slick and spiritless and utterly pedestrian. He wrote, "For a band that started with so much promise, this is a sad situation." By December 31st, 1976, it was over. Bob James departed after the band's performance at Winterland. Montrose quietly disbanded in early 1977, far earlier than anyone had expected given their initial promise. No dramatic announcement, no farewell tour, just silence. The machine stopped running, and when it did, the noise it left behind was deafening. The irony was devastating. The precision and control that had forged a legendary sound had become the very thing that destroyed it. Ronnie's vision, the thing that made Montrose possible, was also the thing that made Montrose unsustainable. Because vision requires followers, and followers eventually become collaborators. And collaborators eventually want autonomy, and autonomy threatens the vision. It's a cycle that has destroyed 1,000 bands, and Montrose was no exception. Sammy Hagar tried a solo career. He signed with Capitol Records and released a succession of albums in the mid to late 70s. Initially, influenced by Ronnie's warnings about heavy metal's commercial viability, he went more singer-songwriter than pure hard rock. But by the time he left Capitol for the newly formed Geffen Records in the early 80s, he'd found his footing. Standing Hampton went platinum on the strength of songs like There's Only One Way to Rock. Then came I Can't Drive 55 in 1984. Massive hit. Solo stardom. Everything he'd wanted. But the real validation came in July 1985 when Van Halen called. Eddie Van Halen had been a Montrose freak since the 70s. He'd met Hagar around 1977 at a festival show and told him, "I'm a Montrose freak. I love the band." When Van Halen needed a new singer after David Lee Roth's departure, Hagar was the call. Ted Templeman, the same producer who'd worked with Montrose, had reportedly even suggested Hagar to Van Halen before their first album. The connection ran deep. Eddie had used the first Montrose album as a template, telling the band, "We're going to have 8 great songs, they're going to be this long, they're going to be this tempo." Van Halen was, in many ways, the fulfillment of what Montrose could have been. Hagar sang with them from 1985 to 1996, then again from 2003 to 2005. In 2007, he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a Van Halen member. Bill Church joined Hagar's solo band, playing on Standing Hampton and other early records. Alan Fitzgerald became a founding member of Night Ranger as their keyboardist, achieving significant commercial success with hits like Sister Christian. Denny Carmassi stayed with Ronnie through the Bob James era, then joined Gamma, Ronnie's next project, for their second album in 1980. But Ronnie's path was more complicated. In 1978, he emerged with his first solo album, Open Fire, produced by Edgar Winter. The all-instrumental album disappointed and angered hardcore Montrose metal fans, according to guitar players John Sievert. In 1979, he formed Gamma with vocalist Davey Pattison, creating a more progressive rock sound. They released 4 albums over the years, but none captured what Montrose had. He continued recording through the 80s and 90s. Solo albums. Another Montrose lineup in 1987 with Mean, various projects and collaborations. He toured regularly from 2001 until 2011, with rotating lineups featuring Keith St. John on vocals. He was diagnosed with prostate cancer in 2007, achieved remission by 2009, kept touring. In January 2012, he filmed a concert DVD, Ronnie Montrose, live at the Uptown. He was planning a Montrose reunion for Sammy Hagar's 65th birthday in October 2012. The original lineup, all together, performing the first album in Cabo. Ronnie was in. They all were. Everything was set. On March 3, 2012, Ronnie Montrose took his own life with a self-inflicted gunshot wound at his home in Millbrae, California. He was 64 years old. Initial reports attributed his death to prostate cancer complications, but the San Mateo County coroner's report released on April 6th confirmed it was suicide. He had battled clinical depression since childhood. The deaths of his uncle and his beloved bulldog within 3 weeks of each other in January 2012 had exacerbated his ongoing struggles. His wife, Lisa, told Guitar Player that he never thought he was good enough. He always feared he'd be exposed as a fraud. So he was exacting in his self-criticism, and the expectations he put upon himself were tremendous. The reunion never happened. The original Montrose lineup would never play together again. 22 years of building something. One moment of ending it. Not with a fight, not with betrayal, just with someone finally being honest about pain that had lasted a lifetime. But the real cost? The relationships. Ronnie and Sammy hadn't spoken in years before Ronnie's death. Not a word. Despite Sammy's attempts to reconcile, emails, calls, planning that reunion, the wounds ran too deep. 22 years of friendship, brotherhood, gone. Replaced by silence and the kind of hurt that doesn't heal because it's not one wound. It's 1,000 small cuts accumulated over decades. Shortly after Ronnie's death, the surviving members reunited at the Regency Ballroom in San Francisco for a tribute concert. Sammy Hagar, Bill Church, and Denny Carmassi, joined by Joe Satriani and Neil Schon, performed the full debut album. The concert was later released as a DVD and aired on AXS TV. It was beautiful. It was devastating, because the person whose vision made it all possible wasn't there to see it. Here's the paradox. The music remains. Those albums still sound incredible. Rock Candy is still on every classic rock station. New generations discover them on Spotify. TikTok kids use their songs in videos. The work outlived the workers. The art survived the artists. Millions of people have these songs as soundtracks to important moments. First kiss, road trips, breakups, weddings, and they'll never know about the arguments, the resentment, the lawyers, the pain. They just know the music. And maybe that's enough. Maybe the point of art is to transcend the artist. But it doesn't feel like enough when you were the artist. The narrative became simple, creative differences. But the truth was so much more complicated. It wasn't one thing. It was 1,000 things. Different values, different needs, different stages of life. Success that revealed incompatibility. Pressure that broke communication. Time that changed people. You can't reduce 22 years to a headline. But headlines are what history remembers. Here's what their story teaches. Success doesn't guarantee happiness. Fame doesn't fix relationships. Money doesn't heal wounds. Achievement doesn't fulfill you. And sometimes, getting everything you want reveals that you wanted the wrong things, or wanted them for the wrong reasons, or wanted them with people who wanted different things. They achieved the dream, sold over 1 million records, influenced Van Halen, Iron Maiden, Guns N' Roses, created a template for American hard rock that's still being followed today. But the dream had a cost, and some of them are still paying it. The saddest part? They created something beautiful together that neither could create alone. The chemistry, the magic, that's gone forever. And somewhere, in their private moments, they knew it. They tried solo careers, other bands, other projects. Nothing came close. Because lightning doesn't strike twice. And when you have it, when you're living in that magic moment, you don't realize how rare it is until it's gone. And then it's too late. They had something millions of people spend their lives searching for. That moment in the basement in 1973, that first radio broadcast, that debut album, that connection where 4 people became one sound, and they destroyed it. Not intentionally, not maliciously, just through being human, through wanting different things, through not knowing how to navigate success without losing what made success possible. Eddie Van Halen said it best. I'm a Montrose freak. He built an empire on their blueprint, used their template for his debut album, hired their singer, carried their torch further than they ever could. And maybe that's the legacy. Not what Montrose became, but what Montrose made possible. The bands they influenced, the guitarists they inspired, the proof that American hard rock could stand on its own. Have you ever had something amazing fall apart? A friendship, a partnership, a creative collaboration where success made things worse instead of better? That's what happened here. The same pattern playing out across every industry, every art form, every human endeavor where people try to create something bigger than themselves. Hit subscribe on American Band Vault right now. Every video uncovers the stories the music industry doesn't want told. Could they have saved it? Was there a moment where one different decision changes everything? Or was this always how it was going to end? Let me know in the comments what you would have done differently.